Hey everyone, Coach Micah here. Welcome back to the channel. It's Theory Thursday, which means we will be continuing our series on how to master debate theory so that we can set ourselves up for success. If you find these videos helpful or informative, then I would appreciate a like on today's video, and please consider subscribing, as the more subscribers that I can get, the more time I can invest into producing some content to help you guys out in your debate season. I also put a lot of stuff on my Patreon page. It's where I upload everything early, basically as soon as I make a video, and sometimes I can make videos weeks in advance. That's where it gets sent right there, right away, so you can have early access. You can check out my Patreon page in the link in the description. I'd also appreciate some comments on the videos as well, so I can interact with you guys and get some ideas on things that you want to learn or answer some tricky questions that you might have. You, of course, could always email me at coachmicahdiaz@gmail.com, and we can get a coaching session set up, and I can help you guys with specific things, whether it be your cases or even speech coaching, like your original oratories, your persuasives, or even your limited preparation events. But the purpose of today's video is to master another part of theory, and it's one that's gonna help you win in about 3 minutes. Let's get into it. Now, you might be thinking that this video is a little bit misleading because it is impossible to win a round within the very first 3 minutes of the round. But what I mean is, setting yourself up well is the key to winning your round. And if you do not set yourself up well, then you're gonna have a harder chance of winning the round. And if you set yourself up really well, then you're almost never going to lose a round unless you mess something up in the middle. But the key here is we need to master the framework, and I'm going to be showing you what I mean in the next couple minutes here. But the very first minutes of the affirmative speech and the first 3 minutes of the negative speech are crucial, and not a lot of people take them seriously. But I'm going to show you how in today's video. We're going to be talking about the 3 elements within this video and videos to come of the case, whether it be the affirmative or the negative case. So you see on my screen here, we have our 3 actors, or I would say the team. So on the far left, you have our pre-value arguments, or our framework. So what these do is they set up the entire round, and this is actually going to be the focus of our video today. Of course, our next team member are the value arguments, the Wang mechanism, the way that we compare a subject to a context, like if the resolution talks about only one thing, or how we compare 2 different things within the context of the resolution. And then, of course, we have the support that you provide to both your framework and your Wang mechanism to get that logical syllogism flowing. In my last video, I showed you what a good value looks like, and you can go ahead and click this link on the top right here to go and watch that again. But we're going to be focusing on our friend here, the pre-value framework. And just to be clear, I categorize cases, constructives, and even the way that you respond using the axis approach, another video that you can access right here, as there are 3 different categories within a case. You have the pre-value centric, you have the value centric, and then the post-value centric. So some cases are written based off of all the things that happen before the value. Some cases are using a particular type of value in order to win, and some cases rely heavily on support and analysis. So if your value is right here, you have the pre-value, what comes before it, you have the value, and then the post-value, which comes after the value. But let's get into the pre-value framework for today's round. So there are several things that make up your pre-value framework. And you'll notice on this slide, I have 2 different colors. So on the left, the blue, this is what the affirmative is going to do. And on the right, you have what the negative is going to do. So first, of course, you have your definitions. So when you are writing definitions or finding definitions, my recommendation to set yourself up well is to find definitions that are narrow. What do I mean by that? They are specific. They aren't just a jumble of words that give some sort of meaning to the round. I think a lot of definitions that people will bring up in LD rounds are just very broad. They're not very specific. They just they're very helpful, they're informative, But if you want an advantage with your definitions, you need to find a specific understanding of a definition, something narrow. It also needs to sound inoffensive. And what I mean by that is sometimes debaters can get away with getting their opponent to agree with something that is actually fundamentally harmful to their case simply because of the words that they used that were phrased in a particular way. And of course, this is where we get into the idea of tricky language, right? So your definition should be narrow, they should seem unassuming, they should seem inoffensive, but what actually is going to happen is your opponent's going to agree to it and you're going to catch them on a technicality. That works a lot of the time, especially if you can do it well. The negative, on the other hand, with the definitions is going to point out that the affirmative's definitions are problematic in some way, shape, or form. And then they're going to provide their own definitions with a reason to prefer. Anytime you attack your opponent's framework, whether it be definitions, whether it be value, and you replace something, you have to give a reason to prefer. You have to give a link. You have to tell the judge why yours is better than theirs. Not simply by just responding to their argument, but then introducing your own and proving why it is the better thing to use. It is the better value. It is the better definition. Never forget your link, your reason to prefer. If you agree to your opponent's definitions on negative, you need to restate what their definitions are saying and show why that is significant, because there's a reason you agreed to their definitions. It's because based off of my opponent's definitions, they actually lose today's round. Or based off my opponent's definitions, their case falls apart due to the way that it is worded. So restate the meaning, restate what the definition is saying about the term, and then prove why that is important. Show why that's important right then and there before moving on. Now, when it comes to analysis, resolutional analysis, the affirmative, again, narrow, inoffensive, and tricky language. The point of a resolutional analysis is to frame the resolution in a particular way that is advantageous to you. It is either to build your case up, or it is to spike and prevent your opponent from bringing up some sort of argument. Now, if you do that, your opponent is going to attack that analysis, and that's going to waste some of their time, right? So there's different strategies when it comes to preventing a resolutional analysis, but ultimately your goal as the affirmative is to prove the resolution true. So if the resolution is a jumbled mess, you want to narrow it down in a way that is easier to be proven true. On the flip side, the negative is going to look at analysis points, and they're specifically going to show, one, what is the affirmative burden? A really good way to bring up an analysis point is to remind the judge the affirmative side has to do X, Y, Z in order to win the round. It's also there to fill in some space. So let's say your opponent does not bring up a resolutional analysis point at all. You now have space that you can frame the round in a way that is advantageous to you. When they've left that open within the first 3 minutes of your case, you are setting up the pieces to allow you to take control of the round. Now, this of course leads us to the question, what exactly should I be analyzing? Well, with this particular resolution, there's a few things, and you'll notice these blue squares right here are both the things that affirmative and negative can analyze. And there's some questions we'll go into here in a second, but the orange square is showing you specifically what the negative is going to focus on if they choose to do so. Let's look at the idea of social change. So here's some questions that are going to help you understand what we can analyze or how we can narrow down the resolution. So question number 1, is there a specific part or element of a society that should change? So by doing this, we're not just talking about social change in general, we're limiting the context down to a particular part of society that needs to change. So you might have a resolutional analysis that does that. Another question we might ask ourselves is, is there a specific situation in which change is needed? So maybe we're talking about how this resolution doesn't make sense unless we need change. So you might limit the resolution that way. You might also say that there are significant parts of society that change, and not just kind of going off of the first question, is there a part of society that should change? But whether or not the parts that should change, is that even significant, right? So when it comes to social change, we are talking about how we can understand what social change really means. When we move to the debate between incrementalism or radicalism, right? We might have a resolutional analysis point that one shows the fundamental differences between them. Two, we can figure out whether or not they need to be significant and how they are significant. And three, we might also show that some of the overlap that they share is unhelpful. It doesn't clash. It doesn't work with today's round. So we need to specifically only focus on times where they will clash, where you have to choose one or the other and they can't work together. That's a very common way to do that. With the idea of superiority, if you're going to set up a specific case based on your own unique, special understanding of what superior means, you might have to ask yourself, is there a specific metric that must be met in order to be considered a superior change? Are there different kinds of superiority? Maybe you're limiting that term to a specific thing. You're also talking about what kind, if it needs to be shown that there are different kinds of superiority, what kind of superiority makes the most sense for today's round? You would show that in a resolutional analysis point. And just for fun, I included this fourth one here, the idea of experimenting or creating a new campaign. Basically the idea that we are going to make the resolution so unique that we're focusing on a particular type of social experiment or a paving the way for a new society, right? Maybe we talk about social change is the idea of creation or not. It isn't the idea of creation. Maybe you need to talk about that, how we need to focus on what, since we've already lived through all this history, maybe we need to focus on what is new, what is exciting. How do we progress to a new plane of civilization? And what side of the resolution is going to break through the glass ceiling and get there, right? So we might experiment with some things there. The negative side is actually going to focus on the burdens if they choose to do so. And what the burdens show is, one, how or what does the affirmative need to prove in order to win the round? And then, of course, we have how does the resolution actually limit the affirmative? What are they unable to do? Is it limiting in the sense that they have so much ground they need to cover that it's impossible and therefore the resolution can't be true? Or are we narrowing the resolution down to one specific thing that they also cannot prove and therefore we win the resolution, if that makes sense? So these are the different type of things to get your minds thinking on what you can analyze. And maybe you have a really unique take on society. That thing is going to be shown in your resolutional analysis point. And of course, your resolutional analysis points need to make sense, right? They need to have some sort of logical backing. Now, just like I did with the values video, I want to get into some examples of resolutional analysis points that I have seen run in tournaments and that I've had students send to me to analyze, and of course, helping them out in those coaching sessions, which, if you want a coaching session, you want to look over how we can better your case, make it stronger, and give you a better chance to win the next tournament, go ahead and email me, coachmikadiaz@gmail.com. So there are three different things that I wanted to really focus on because these are some of the more fun resolutional analysis points. First, and these are all run by affirmative, by the way. I mean, maybe the negative has run these, but I've mostly seen them with affirmative. The first is the idea of taking out morality. So you might have seen this a lot, and maybe you run a case like this, the idea that this resolution has no moral charge, and therefore we are just looking on the numbers and the data. If we put them both on paper, which one creates the better type of social change? And then, of course, your value is something that is not morally charged, like whichever side, helps the economy, whichever side changes hearts and minds, right? It's persuasive, creates stability, things like that. Now, I personally don't feel that the morally irrelevant argument is very strong, and there are multiple reasons for this. I'm not going to get into them in today's video. If you're curious, go ahead and reach out and we can meet and I can show you why. But the big reason is because societies are a collective group of people who share some sort of value system. If one society has competing value systems, it's not going to be cohesive and won't work, which is a lot of people's problems with multiculturalism, for example. But if we're looking at this resolution through the lens that it is morally irrelevant, but the negative needs to focus on the morals, here are some cross-examination questions that can help. First, should societies improve or implode? I really like this question because they can only, should only answer society should improve. And we might ask them why. And the reason I'm doing this is setting up the argument that we need to be looking at how to improve a society. But improving a society generally means taking out the bad and putting in the good. And good and bad are moral things. Do you see where I'm coming from here? So if I'm going to attack the morally irrelevant argument, then I'm going to start with cross-examination and ask whether or not we need to progress or whether we need to just implode. And then ask them why. The next resolutional analysis point is the idea of clash. So sometimes your opponents say we got to be looking at times when they clash. You don't have to ask this question. This could be a good question to ask if they don't really talk about what clash is. You might say, well, what would be an example of clash? What would be a situation in which they both could be used? That can just help you understand where your opponent's coming from, help the judge understand where we're coming from, and then you can attack that idea and prove how your side upholds that idea best. The third example is the just end argument, which a lot of people, especially when we're talking about the ends versus means debate, will focus on. You have to look at times where the goodness or badness, the superiority of something is linked to what it has achieved and where it has gotten us. So I might ask you cross-examination because an argument like that kind of says that we don't really care about the means to which we got the end. So I just want to ask my opponent and make sure, should we ignore the means by which we got to the just end? And if they say no, then their resolutional analysis of just end isn't as powerful because yes, we need a just end, but we also need a just means. And then the means versus end debate is just washed at that point. If they say, yes, we should ignore the means by which we got to the just end, then you can point out how, bad that can be, especially because the bad things that people do in the name of doing something good, right? I did something horrible in order to achieve a just end. You can see the problem with that. So these are just 3 examples I've seen. Not a lot of people are running resolutional analysis points. And I think that's problematic because there is so much to understand in today's round. There are so many terms, and the terms have double meanings, right? So first we got to understand what incrementalism is. We got to understand the differences between incrementalism and radicalism. What does superior actually mean? How do we determine a social change is superior? What is radicalism? How is it different from just the idea of radical ideology? Is it different from a radical ideology? How do we achieve something? How do we achieve social change? And what is social? What is society? What makes up social change, right? All of those questions and more are linked just from the wording of the resolution. So if you're not analyzing it and you're simply defining it, you're allowing for many questions to either go unanswered or to be used against you later on in the round by the negative side who will answer those questions. Or even, and sometimes more annoying, when you and your opponent have been basically equal and the judge doesn't know who to vote for, they're going to answer those questions that were never presented because they don't know how to pick a winner. This is so close that I just need to answer all of the different questions of this resolution myself and then see which side of the resolution, which debater has gotten closer to the conclusion that I've reached. So you need to have a resolutional analysis point. It is going to make everything so much easier. It clarifies the round. If you don't, your opponent will. And if your opponent does, neither of you do, then you're going to set yourself up for a messy reason for decision and one that may or may not go your way. And we never want to risk it. I don't want to ever put you in a position where there's a 50-50 chance that after the debate round you could lose. We need to improve those chances as much as humanly possible, and analyzing the resolution will do that for you. This is where we figure out the things that we need to define. With all of that, just all of those words and that confusion and the muddy water that it creates, I want you to take a look to the left of this screen. You'll see a nice, beautiful, flowery meadow. That's the image that you should be painting in the mind of your judge. You should be so clear and so concise and logical that your case is like a flowery meadow, a beautiful vista in which the judge can relax and just take it all in and know what is happening. It's just beautiful, it's clear, it's sunny. And of course, here are some words that you should 100% have a definition for. You need to have a definition for these. Whether you're on affirmative, whether you're on negative, you need to have a definition for social change. And that definition needs to include the answers to the questions, what is society and what about it can change? Because social change is talking about society and changing society. So what about those things, right? Incrementalism needs to be clear and simple. I don't want a broad, vague definition that is just a gradual increase or a step-by-step. That doesn't really tell you anything because gradual step-by-step can overlap. Radical changes can be gradual. Radical changes can happen in steps, right? It's not necessarily the time that makes them different. A radical thing can happen, but the effects of that radical thing can take years in order to see the effects of it, right? So how are these actually different? How do they not overlap? Here's a very clear and simple difference between them. And this is based off of the research that you will do if you go into the differences between the two. And I have another video on the differences between radicalism and incrementalism, and you can click that in the top right here. Incrementalism fixes a system but does not replace it. So if there's problematic things within a society, rather than tear those things out and put new ones in, we just fix it. We fix it up. We add a little new wood here. We take some of the rotting wood out. We fix it up. We make it look nice. That's what incrementalism does. It operates under the assumption that everything is fine. We just need a Band-Aid. We just need to fix it. Nothing needs to change in any significant way. We just got to fix it. And yes, that can take steps. It can take time. It's not very sweeping. It's not very big. You're just slowly taking things out here and there. Radicalism is different fundamentally. It says a system cannot be fixed. We have to replace it. That is the radicalism and incrementalism are specific terms to describe social phenomena, and that's what those phenomena are. Incrementalism, the idea that society can be fixed, and doesn't need to be replaced. Radicalism, the idea that society is too problematic, cannot or should not be fixed, and should be replaced. So replacement, to replace or not to replace, that is the core, key, fundamental difference between these two terms. Now, your case may not operate on those differences, and that's okay, because if you can clearly explain the step-by-step, gradual, big, sweeping change difference thing, that's fine. Remember, your rhetoric matters, your words matter. But if you are struggling to understand the difference between these two, then the judge is also going to struggle to understand the difference between these two. And if you're negative, the judge is going to not like the idea of radical. A lot of affirmatives are doing a really good job as painting radicalism as the same as radical ideologies and really bad things that hurt the conservative party, pretty much. So if we take it from a holistic, you take a step back, look at it at a bird's eye view, replace or not replace. Those are the key differences. Your definitions should use that understanding. And then, of course, what is superiority? A lot of people just say that it means better, or they skip that and say, we'll show what superiority means in my value. That's not particularly helpful because superiority connotates something. To call something superior means something. So you need to address that meaning, whether it be through a resolutional analysis point, a specific type of definition, or a point that you add on to your value. How do we know something is superior? If your value is human rights, for example, we would say when we talk about the superiority of social change, we're talking about which agent of change makes society better. And how do we know when society has become better? We see this with my value of human rights. You see that logical chain that I just made there? Superiority means improving society. How do we improve society? With my value. Not just superiority means whichever side upholds human rights. No, there's one more step we need to make there. Superiority is the improving of society. How do we do that? With my value. So that's why you need to have the definition or the understanding analysis point on superiority. Now, there's several different types of definitions that you can use, different sources, I should say, right? So where do you get your definitions? One, you have your dictionary or encyclopedia. Generally, dictionaries are just the straight definition of the word. They don't really give much insight. Encyclopedias do give a little bit of insight because they kind of get into either the root of the word, or they get into why the word was created, where it was created, who created it, etc. Encyclopedia Britannica, for example, is one that is very credible and gives a lot of really good understanding. And I would read the articles on incrementalism and radicalism if you have not yet. Another type of definition is, of course, the firm or the expert. It is either the institution or some sort of museum or some sort of collection of people within a building, some sort of expertise, some sort of organization that was created simply to study and define that thing, right? Another way you can do it is an operational definition, which is the idea that you have analyzed. You're almost like the AI. The judge Googles what is the difference or what is incrementalism, and you are the result. Incrementalism is this, and you've gotten your own definition from all the definitions out there. And of course, you have ones from your left to your right that you can say, well, no, my operational definition does mean this. Look at these several definitions here. But basically what you're doing is paraphrasing and creating something very palatable for your judge, something very simple. And then, of course, you might have a particular type of definition that comes from the previous narrow analysis, advantageous analysis, and then based on your specific case, incrementalism actually is limited down to this particular thing. So because I've already set up the really persuasive framework, I can now show you where incrementalism and radicalism fit within that. I'm giving you very specific definitions based off of my analysis. I want to end this part of Theory Thursday by saying and reminding you that you're not here to debate your opponent. You're here to win the judge, to persuade them to vote for you. And you need to do this by speaking to them, not at them. Speak as if you and the judge were actually having a conversation, as if they could respond. You need to use simple words. There's no need to just bring out some fancy pants words because you think it's going to make you look better. Oftentimes that isn't the case. Use simple language that is easy to understand. Not because you're stupid, not because your opponent's stupid, not because the judge is stupid. It's because it's just easier to listen to. You don't need to make things more complicated. This resolution is already really complicated. So use simple words. Make it make sense. Make it memorable. You also need to provide and have a clear understanding of either the differences, the similarities, or the clash between incrementalism and radicalism. That's really important. You need to have a clear understanding of how society works. You need to have a clear understanding of what your opponents are trying to do when they bring up a resolutional analysis point that seems a little tricky. You need to have a clear understanding, and you need to show that by using simple words and proving to the judge that at the end of the day, we want a clear debate round. We don't want a definitions debate. We don't want it to get muddy, right? And then, of course, this is something I see debaters do 10% of the time, probably a little bit less. Why does it matter? Debaters get caught up in the weeds. We want to prove my opponent wrong. Their evidence is wrong. Because my evidence says they're wrong. Moving on, I win the value, moving on. Why does it matter? How is it significant? You need to be asking that to the judge, showing them, Judge, how does this matter? Or why does this matter? How is this significant? Basically showing them, why did you make the move that you made? Why did you respond to the argument in that way? Judge, my opponent's applications actually don't stand in today's debate round because they aren't an example of incrementalism. Here is why that is important. Here is why that matters. This is why it's so significant. This is why it's crucial. You need to be using those words and showing the judge, telling the judge, not just saying, my impact you can tag as blank. Why does this matter, Judge? It matters because of XYZ, and you can tag this in my impact as XYZ, right? You need to ask and use the phrase, why does this matter? Every judge will be so grateful that you've done that because sometimes they don't know why it matters. I'm sure a lot of judges, maybe even your parents, have been like, I don't understand why this is even relevant in today's debate round. Why should I? You told me this is why you should vote for me, but I still don't really know why I should vote for you. It's because you're not speaking to the judge, you're speaking at them. Speak to them. Why does it matter? If you want to win the debate round in 3 minutes, you have to show why it all matters. This is where we get down to the idea of your definitions and analysis. Why are you analyzing the resolution the way that you are? Why are your definitions so important? Why does it matter? That's how you win a debate round. That's how the affirmative can win a debate round in 3 minutes when they only have 3 minutes left at the end of the day. They show why everything matters. And that is a wrap on this episode of Theory Thursday. If you're interested in my other projects, Mars Hill Monday, my other videos that I have teased throughout today's, you can go to my Patreon page or of course my YouTube page and watch those there. I'd really appreciate a subscription or a follow on Patreon as I continue to work on creating content to give you the edge over your opponent. Anyways, I will see you next week. Have a good one.